Big Egypt, Chicago, Illinois. Part 3. Why hello there again, my wonderful ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Did you miss me? I sure hope so, because I can honestly say that I really missed you guys. I know, that sounds crazy, right? Well, it's true. You make it hard not to because you're all such magnificent people. So much so, that if I were to start describing just how magnificent you really are, you'd be sure to say, okay, enough with all the flattery. What's the catch? So in order to avoid that possible collision, I'll just leave it at you all are magnificent people. Anywho's, I'm really glad to see that you made it back. And I'm hoping that everyone here is in great spirit and wide awake, and ready to focus in on today's subjects. Because in this video we will be uncovering a number of truths that have been deliberately buried in lies for at least 4 to 5 centuries now. And one of those main truths is that Chicago, Illinois is Big Egypt. Albeit the name Egypt has only been around for less than 1,000 years, we're not as concerned with the name itself, but more so the prototype of what the Egypt of Africa was patterned after. Although there are other prototypes all across Turtle Island that bear a similar description, which is another truth that we will be exposing, Chicago was the specific model that was chosen for a reason that we will be revealing in the latter part of this video. As for now, another hidden truth that we want to touch upon is the fact that you are an extremely ancient people. So ancient that you don't realize your degree of seniority on this planet. Although we do not succumb to any religious ideology, this truth is alluded to in the Bible in Genesis chapter 2 verse 7, where it reads, "And the Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed the breath of life into his nostrils, and man became a living soul." Now mind you, this event is reported to have taken place within the same time frame in which the earth was formed, which of course would imply that you came into existence when the earth was created. Now that's ancient, is it not? According to archaeological science, our planet is 4.54 billion years old. Whereas on the other hand, a man by the name of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who is the founder of the Nation of Islam, taught that you have been in existence for 76 trillion years. And yes, that's trillion with a T, which is humanly impossible to count. So what this basically suggests is that you are as infinite as are the stars in the cosmos, which are in actuality the essence of your chemical makeup as carbon beings, which you call melanin. Now this is extremely important for you to comprehend, so you can fully understand that you have always been here, and that there is no habitable place on this planet Earth that your ancestors did not traverse. Which brings us to our next truth that has been covered in lies. And that is, when it comes to the original inhabitants of this land that is now called America, that would be you. You were here way before time began. Which means that the number of years that you have existed on this particular landmass would be impossible to count. But for the sake of clarity, let's just say 76 trillion years. And it was you, by way of your ancestors, who Christopher Columbus encountered when he sailed to these shores from Spain. And at first sight, labeled you Indians because your appearance was almost identical to that of your distant cousins in the East Indies. So for the record, you were never Indians. You were never Native Americans or indigenous either. And you were never Negro, black, colored, or African American. For these are all labels that were strategically cast upon you. And you, due to your forgotten knowledge of self, your ancestors, and your culture, agreed to term yourselves as such. And those who sailed to these shores with ill intentions have been using your ignorance of their deceit against you in every facet of your lives. And the document that they used to moralize their barbaric piracy is the Doctrine of Discovery of 1493, which was written and decreed by Pope Nicholas V. And what that doctrine did was, through the Catholic Church, proclaim the rights of Christian nations to seize the lands and its possessions from all non-Christian peoples by force, in the interests of so-called saving their victims' souls. Imagine that. Your ancestors were here at peace, minding their own business, engaging in their own spiritual practices, which were in tune with nature, the ancestors, and the universe. But since they weren't Christians, they were either murdered, taken as captives and forced into slavery, or they were exiled into hiding, all with their land and possessions confiscated and plundered by self-righteous foreign invaders. Now let the Church say amen to that. And another document is the Sestake v. Trust Act of 1666. What that act basically stipulates is that if the rightful heirs to an estate do not claim their estate, then they are considered dead and lost at sea, which in turn gives non-heirs and non-beneficiaries the right to parasite off of that which is left unclaimed by the rightful heirs. This includes land, property, physical bodies which are considered vessels, and the energy that is housed in and produced by that vessel/physical body, while of course that rightful heir is still breathing. And although he or she may be physically alive and breathing, they are considered mentally dead and adolescent because they have not claimed what is rightfully theirs by birthright and inheritance. Now I know you're wondering, what does any of this stuff have to do with Chicago being Big Egypt? And the answer is everything. In fact, it's not only about Chicago being Big Egypt, but it's more so about this entire landmass and your godly and organic connection to it that you have lost completely. You see, the fact of the matter is this. You are an ancient people on your own land wandering around blindly under the impression that you came from somewhere else. And since the days that your ancestors had to fight off foreign invaders from taking your land and destroying your original customs, you have been consistently indoctrinated with lies and low-vibrating information that has caused you to mentally and spiritually move further and further away from your divine power, while at the same time others are benefiting from your lack of true self-realization. And each second, minute, hour, day, week, month, and year, your time, your energy, and your resources are being sucked away by merciless vampires in ways that you are completely unaware of or couldn't even begin to fathom. While the harsh reality of it all is that you are the receptacle that the whole world is plugged into. In other words, you are the plug, and it is your lack of true self-awareness and your lack of your true history that keeps the wheel of fortune spinning for everyone else other than yourselves. For these reasons, this information was provided in order to give you a brief update as to how you got here in the first place. And now you know why you had absolutely no idea that Chicago, Illinois is Big Egypt. But the days of us being under a spell and complacent are over. We know who we are and what our positions are on this planet. Therefore, we are at this moment reclaiming our lost heritage. And we are now sending a blunt message to all energy vampires who have done everything in your power to keep us asleep, so you can continue sucking the life force right out of our veins by our unintentional consent. Beware, there's a new sun rising brightly on the horizon. In part 2 of this video series, we finished up with the southern part of Illinois that is called Little Egypt, and we found nothing there remotely resembling the Egypt of Africa. So in respect of our great ancestors, and as the great-great-grandchildren of the ancient Mississippi River culture, we are leaving that area for now, and we are honored to travel towards Big Egypt in the same fashion in which they traveled throughout the land, by way of boat, up the Mississippi River. But before we make our way to Chicago, Illinois, we need to make a brief pit stop on the small island of Rock Island, Illinois. Now, as a quick note, we're not here in an attempt to locate anything that may resemble the Egypt of Africa. Instead, we are exploring this location for an entirely different reason, of which will be discussed here shortly. As for now, this small island, which is approximately 173 miles from the city of Chicago, according to a 2023 census report, has a population of 144,687 people. Its landmass is a little over 16 square miles, with approximately 1.022 miles of water. And lastly, it is located at the confluence of the Rock River and the Mississippi River. Now that we're done with the statistical stuff, let's get to the reason why it was important to stop here before we make our way to Big Egypt. Rock Island, Illinois contains one of the Earth's most powerful energy vortexes, which some may refer to as a stargate, which is rarely spoken of or even mentioned in the lists of energy vortexes of the world. I wonder why, but it's okay, because we know without a shadow of a doubt that it's here. And we also know why it's been such a big deal to keep it a secret. Now, as for those of you who may be unaware of what an energy vortex is, it is a specific place on the planet where the Earth's natural energy is especially strong and so swirls in very concentrated patterns. These vortexes are noted for amplifying spiritual experiences, for the promotion of healing, and also heightening the levels of consciousness during meditation. Amongst the other energy vortexes of the world, the one located on Rock Island was a special location where the high matriarchal priestesses of the land chose to perform deep meditation rituals on in order to maintain the supreme balance of the planet through the feminine energy. Unfortunately, that divine harmony was put to an end with the event of the invasions of the Christian Crusades and the establishing of the patriarchal rulership. Now here we are 500 years later with ongoing war after war and non-stop mentionings of wars. Nevertheless, as we view the map of Illinois, we see how it would only be right for Chicago to be Big Egypt. I mean, the state of Illinois does have a lot going on, from crossing solar eclipses to what has been labeled as the largest mound pyramid in North America, to taboo energy vortexes, as well as, well, I'm pretty sure you see where I'm going with this. In order for us to travel eastward by boat from Rock Island, Illinois to our destination in Chicago, Illinois, we will be taking the Rock River to the Hennepin Canal, and from there connecting to the Illinois River. Once we reach Channahon, Illinois, the Illinois River becomes the Des Plaines River. From there we'll be traveling until we reach Lockport, Illinois, which is 38 miles from Chicago. There we will connect to the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal, and then travel until we reach the tip of Lamont, Illinois. At that point we will be connecting to the Calumet-Sag Canal, and travel its waters until it merges into the Little Calumet River. Wow, our land is beautiful, don't you agree? Okay people, we're getting closer to our destination. The inevitable truth is reaching its fruition. Can you feel the energy? I know that I sure can. And boy does it feel majestic. The closer we get, the more my adrenaline starts to flow. And I know that there's no way in the world that I'm by myself. Wait a minute. I'm seeing something in the distance. Yes, we're finally here. Ladies and gentlemen, behold, Big Egypt, Chicago, Illinois' baby. Now for all you non-believers who think that these are just big heaps of dirt covered with grass and weeds, sorry, but you're sadly mistaken. They're much, much more than that. In fact, many of you have been riding past these monumental structures on the Bishop Ford Expressway, the East 106th Street Bridge, and a number of other locations within the same area, your entire lives, and have never really given them any consideration whatsoever. But it's okay. I understand. You weren't supposed to. You were supposed to remain asleep, for an eternity, I guess. Or at least that's what the energy vampires were hoping happened. But unfortunately for them, those days of our people being asleep at the wheel are over. Our ancestors are driving now. If that were not the case, this video would not exist. For years we were lied to, and told that these were mere landfills or something of that sort. But I'm here to tell you, they're nowhere near being landfills, or any other ridiculous non-factor that they may have been converted into. But what they are in reality are ancient pyramids that were built by the hands of our divine ancestors millions, billions, or possibly even trillions of years ago. And there's a reason why the conquistadors wanted us to remain oblivious to what was right before our very eyes. And that reason is because of our organic and supernatural connection to these mounds and pyramids and the spirits and energies of our ancestors that are connected to them as well. For these reasons, they have made sure that the majority of them are off limits and are in areas that they have restricted so that we would have little to no access to them at all. They have done this because they know that once the original people of this land fully realize this truth, that we will be tapping into a power that is a force to be reckoned with. This is why it has been so important for their religious agents to instill into your mind that any mention of your ancestral practices are demonic, satanic, or so-called witchcraft and whatnot. While the real demonic witchcraft practitioners are the ones who have been oppressing our people since the day that the Christian crusaders from Europe stepped foot on these shores. In other words, they have been utilizing our ancient sciences this whole time, in reverse, for their benefit and to our detriment, while we in turn have been wholeheartedly partaking in their religious shenanigans and political buffoonery for quite some time now, only to our detriment and of course, likewise to their benefit. Now for those of you who may still be in utter disbelief, we are about to reveal the sacred geometry of Big Egypt from an aerial view, so you can get a full understanding. I guarantee that by this, you'll have a change of mind, provided by Google Earth. As you remember from part 1 of this video series, a nested triangle refers to a triangle or number of triangles that are placed inside of a larger triangle. Behold, the sacred architecture of the 3 great pyramids of Egypt, hence our nested triangle. Now the second thing we'll be doing here is getting a closer look at the capital city of Big Egypt. Here we have the Grand Temple where all major sermons, prayers and meditations were held, as well as praises given to the ancestors of past generations. As you can see, it has been utterly destroyed, not by time, but by the hands of the merciless bloodsuckers who are steadfast in their campaigns. Next we have the Great Step Pyramid, which of course is tens of millions of years older than the Step Pyramid of Djoser in Egypt, Africa. In fact, the Pyramid of Djoser is fashioned after this Step Pyramid, as well as other similar step pyramids on Turtle Island. Here is where technological and astrological sciences were created and advanced. Notice its triangular shape, which was constructed in sync with the level and degree of vortex energy, which emanates from that specific location. Just like Rock Island, here is where the high priestesses and priests performed deep meditation rituals in order to maintain supreme balance, as well as to harness certain forces of energy in creation. It was also where rites of passage rituals were held for those who desired to become members of the righteous priesthood. Next we have the Temple of the 4 Elements of Earth, Fire, Water, and Air. It was here where our ancestors would frequent often, even daily, in order to give reverence to the great conscious forces of nature, which in Kemet/Egypt are referred to as the Neteru. Here, the ancestors would invoke the elements and their hosts to work in accordance with the divine will of the Great Spirit and in favor of the people of the land. As you can see, it has also been destroyed with reckless abandon and thus filled with some form of acidic fluid. We now move to the Long Mound Pyramid. This grand structure would be the equivalent of what we in this day and time would consider as a hall. Here is where major celebrations such as reunions, feasts, jamborees, and marriage/matrimony ceremonies were held. Notice how 1/4 of its structure has been shamelessly destroyed as well. Now, as impractical as it may seem, here is where the first great Sphinx statue resided, facing due west. It was formed by the hands of the greatest sculptors of the time, and thus constructed with the finest granites and stone minerals that could be found on Turtle Island. It also was either destroyed or dug up and hauled off to some undisclosed location, which the truth shall be revealed in the very near future. Notice the acidic fluid that has been inserted into the cavity where it once sat. Behold, the Royal Palace Pyramid of the highest Queen Matriarch Priestess of the entire land, Your Highness Queen Mitha, approximately 500 plus years ago. This was the living quarters of the Queen Matriarch along with her royal bloodline family members, including her king, other grand matriarchs, her most trusted stewards and high priestesses and priests, etc. Next we have the Great Boat Docking Mound. As you can see, it was built to hold 6 boats neatly, with an additional 2 boats that could be double docked, which would total 8 boats. In addition to this mound used for boats, notice the inscriptions that are carved into its surface, which bear the ancient Kemetic Nahuatl letters K and D. Last but not least, we have the 2 pyramids of the Queen's personal warrior army. And by last I mean in reference to this particular exploration of the capital city of Big Egypt. Because trust me, we haven't even begun to scratch the surface yet. Here is where the warrior guards of the Queen resided, with posts set up to prevent the intrusion of any foreign invaders. According to Wikipedia, Cairo, Illinois was so named because its site was reminiscent of Cairo, Egypt. in regard to its location at the confluence of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. As we view the map of Cairo, Egypt, we recognize Cairo's location in regard to the Mediterranean Sea and the Nile River. We also take note of the fact that the Great Pyramids of Giza are approximately 5 miles from the Nile River itself. Now, in regard to the actual confluence at Cairo, Illinois, that is reminiscent of the confluence located in Egypt, Africa, we recognize the splitting of the Nile River around 2 islands, which are located between Giza and Cairo. And we recognize the confluence of the Nile, where it reconnects at the tips of these particular islands, which could very well solidify the resemblance of Cairo, Illinois, to Cairo, Egypt in reference to this particular confluence of the Nile River. Now, there's one thing that we must keep in mind, and that is that the pyramids of the Americas are millions of years older than the pyramids of Egypt, Africa, especially the ones in what is considered North America. And due to the fact that Chicago, Illinois, is the one true original Egypt, that would mean that the Egypt of Africa is a copied version of its prototype of Big Egypt. So in regard to Cairo, Illinois, being so named because of its position at the confluence of the Mississippi and Ohio rivers, those who gave it that name were actually referring to Big Egypt, Chicago, Illinois, which sits at the confluence of the Little Calumet River and the Grand Calumet River. We are finally bringing part 3 of this video to a close. Be sure to stay tuned for part 4 of this video series, because as previously stated, we haven't even begun to scratch the surface yet, which means that this is only the beginning, and that we have a lot of work to do. Lastly, I sincerely hope that you have been awakened by the content in this video, and that you truly enjoyed the messages contained herein. If so, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you again, my magnificent original organic people of the land. Until we meet again, it's been electrifying.